The ceiling isn't rock. It's breathing. Jax Miller wiped a smear of hydraulic grease from his visor and adjusted the grip on the heavy-duty thermic lance. He was 600 meters below the crust of Vesta 4, trapped in a geological nightmare where the walls were made of quartz and the air was thick with the smell of ionized ozone. Beside him, 3 other miners huddled in the amber glow of their industrial work lights, their respirators rattling with the sound of panic. High above, in the jagged crevices of the ceiling, the plasma weavers were moving. They were obsidian-colored horrors the size of transport trucks, spinning webs not of protein, but of superheated, ionized plasma. A single strand could shear through a reinforced titanium bulkhead, and the weaver's grave, the nickname for this specific shaft, was currently choked with them. "Stay behind the exoplates." Jax barked, his voice echoing through the comms. "They want us to run. If we move fast, we trigger the motion sensors in the silk. Stay still." A weaver descended. It didn't crawl, it lowered itself on a thread of blinding blue energy, its 10 legs clicking against the crystal walls. Its abdomen pulsed with a sickening violet light as it prepared to launch a net of plasma silk. Jax didn't flinch. "Humans aren't the fastest things in the galaxy and we certainly don't have built-in lasers, but we know how to play with fire." Gage dumped the canister. "Now." The youngest miner kicked over a 50-gallon drum of ignition fluid, a volatile hydrocarbon-rich sludge used for deep-crust drilling. The black liquid flooded the cavern floor, coating the jagged crystals. The weaver hissed, a sound like a steam pipe bursting, and fired its net. The blue plasma silk hit the sludge. The cavern erupted. The ionized silk acted as the perfect spark. The hydrocarbon sludge didn't just burn. It detonated in a controlled, linear explosion that roared upward. Jax stepped into the heat, his heavy exosuit's heat shields turning a dull, glowing red. He raised the nozzle of his industrial sprayer, pumping more pressurized fluid into the heart of the flame. "How's that for a web, you 8-legged freak?" The weaver shrieked as the orange fire climbed its silk thread. The plasma silk, normally its greatest weapon, became its undoing, a high-energy fuse that carried the human-made inferno straight to its belly. The creature's translucent abdomen expanded, the ionized gas inside reaching critical temperature, and then it popped. A spray of boiling violet ichor and charred chitin rained down. Jax didn't stop. He turned the nozzle toward the ceiling, sweeping the flame across the web canopy. The weavers were masterpieces of evolution, efficient, silent, and lethal. But they were biological. They were made of carbon and chemistry. And Jax Miller was a master of industrial destruction. He used the very webs intended to trap him as fuel for his own furnace. One weaver tried to lunge through the fire, its front mandibles glowing with a plasma charge. Jax met it midair with the hydraulic claw of his suit. He caught the creature by its multifaceted head, the metal screaming under the pressure, and slammed it into a crystal spire. With his other hand he jammed the thermic lance into its thorax and pulled the trigger. The white-hot spike punched through the armor, and the weaver's internal bioluminescence flickered and died. "Pressure's dropping. The shaft is clearing." Gage yelled over the roar of the fire. The remaining weavers, sensing a predator they couldn't calculate, retreated into the dark, unmapped cracks of the lower mantle. They were hunters, and hunters knew when the environment had become hostile to their existence. Jax stood amongst the cooling embers, his suit covered in soot and alien fluids. He looked at the charred remains of the silk, now nothing more than harmless, blackened ash. He didn't wait for a rescue. He didn't wait for a sign. He just picked up his welding torch. "The clock's ticking, boys," Jax said, his voice level and cold. "We've got a quota to hit. Let's get back to work." The fire fades to a dull ember. The crystals reflect the cold light of the tools. The human goes back to the stone. Jax Miller leads his team deeper into the dark, his heavy boots crushing the burnt husks of the starborn spiders. The grave is empty, the silk is gone, and the mountain belongs to the men with the shovels. The work continues and the deep remains silent.